Hello and welcome back to the Scaling Europe show. I'm Seb Johnson. I'm here with Paul Rippon, who is a fintech OG, seven-time entrepreneur, super interesting character, one of the co-founders of both Monzo and Starling and an alpaca farm. And he's now doing his next thing, which is super exciting. Paul, can you just touch on what it is that you're working on now?
Hey Seb, thanks very much for having me. Yes, so the next thing is launch of a fund. It's called Rippon Capital, and we're about to go live right now.
Amazing. And why this fund? Tell me all the details. You've had a super interesting journey working in fintech, but also in investing your own, building a range of businesses. Tell me a bit about like what this fund is and why you've decided that this is going to be your next thing.
Yeah, thanks. So the fund is really a culmination of my life experiences. And I used to say that I was a late to life entrepreneur. And, when we started Monzo, I was nearly 40 years old, and that's why that kind of ingrained in my mind. I then started to remember those hazy early school day memories, and I recall that I actually outsourced one of my paper rounds to a friend. And so not only did I earn the pound for my paper round, I also got 50p off his, and he did the work as well. So I guess I wasn't that late to life. The other notable thing that I remember was when I went to Wolverhampton Polytechnic, first person in my family ever to stay on past secondary school. And I took out a 0% overdraft back in the day at 1992. And you know what? I got called in to NatWest by this rather stern lady who asked me to explain how I'd had the audacity to take out a 0% overdraft and withdraw all £1,000 in one go, and that she'd also been in touch with HSBC and known that I'd done the same there. And she asked me, where is the money? And I said, well, I've put it in a national savings capital bond that's earning 13% interest per year. And she just looked at me horrified. Anyway, where am I heading with this? Maybe I wasn't so late to life as an entrepreneur to spot opportunities. I had a pretty successful executive career across a range of banks, everything from NatWest to Northern Rock through to Lloyd's. And I'm sure many of the audience will be familiar that I'm a co-founder of both Starling and Monzo Bank, which are themselves fabulous rides. For the last few years, I've been very much enjoying doing investing, and I've built up quite a portfolio of around 30 companies, some with minority stakes, some with quite major stakes. And I find myself just a couple of 3 months ago, finding myself asking the question that I was actually really enjoying the intersection of people and investing. I was enjoying it so much, and I started asking myself, do I want to keep doing that on my own, or is there a way I could amplify it? Because I've frankly got so many requests from entrepreneurs and businesses to help, and we're talking here about £1 billion of funding that I personally have got outstanding that I feel I owe entrepreneurs in the UK and beyond. And I thought, I'm going to do something about that. And so I wrote down the list of 12 people who, in my opinion, I've met over my life, and I thought, if I want 12 people by my side to set up a fund, who are they? Some of the names might be familiar to you. Tom Blomfield, Baroness Kingsmill, Gary Dolman, Rob Fellows, Stephen Black, Annabelle Todd. These are magical people in their space. And I messaged each one of them in turn, and every single one of them said, yes, whatever you want, we're here for you. And that, Seb, is how we've got to this point and why we're launching Rippon Capital.
That's amazing. It's amazing validation of the relationships that you must have built over the course of your career that all of those people immediately jumped in.
It's a great honour and very humbling, actually, that I was able to contact each one of them. I did write down some names, and I tell you what I did in the end. There's a great YouTube video, and it's about the Navy SEALs approach to recruitment. And Navy SEALs have a dual index, and it's high performance and high trust. And I thought about the team that I wanted to assemble, and I thought, that is exactly what I want. high performance and high trust. So in my opinion, these people are world-class operators, founders, investors. They are also, each one of them, somebody that I would be happy to entrust every single decision and every single communication from the fund, and I would be delighted that they will give a wonderful answer and get a wonderful response. And I'm not sure you can do that too many times. There were a few people, and I have to say, and I'm not going to be drawn on names, so don't look at me like that, that I put them in the high performance box. Unfortunately, they didn't quite get into the high trust box. And at my particular stage of life, I think hopefully there's a few more years left in me yet, but at my stage in life, frankly, I don't want to work with somebody and do something like this that I don't trust. And so the people that made the cut and to my good fortune all said yes are high performers and absolutely high trust.
Amazing. And what role will they be playing in the fund?
Yeah, so there's a mix there. I mentioned a dozen names. I've got a group of them, so the likes of Tom Blomfield and Gary Dolman, as well as other names like John Penny and Baroness Kingsmill. They are going to be advisors, right? So as part of my investment approach with companies and entrepreneurs that I look after, you don't get hold of me to do the middle 90% of your stuff. You contact Paul Rippon for your outstandingly good opportunities and your huge problems. And in the same way, I value the support and the advice of my advisors in exactly the same way. And I've been using it already, and I'm very grateful for their help. The other members of the team, so the likes of Annabelle Todd, Rod Fellows, Stephen Black, they are characters who are sleeves rolled up, partners, executive, whatever you want to call them, deal makers, doers to make the fund happen. And that balance is quite wonderful. There are some more people on the periphery. They know who they are. They know that their skills and services are needed. But at this particular stage of the fund, we've got the right people, and there are more coming on stream and more very exciting names that hopefully I get to share with you before long.
And let's talk about the fund then. Can you touch a bit on, how big is it hoping to be, and where are you going to be investing it?
Yeah, thanks. I'm not doing this to create a small private office. The team that I've assembled is an incredible world-class team. And so if I give you our strapline, connecting world-class entrepreneurs to growth capital, hopefully that gives some of it away. So the intention here is to create a multi-billion pound platform, that, Seb, I've heard a number of your interviews and comments, we talk about people and skills leaving the country, leaving Europe, whatever, right? Some people blame them, some people blame the system. I can assure you, my team, Rippon Capital, and the difference that we're going to be making to entrepreneurs and their families is going to make a difference right here in the UK, Europe, and beyond. And I can absolutely assure you of that, and you have my commitment on that.
I love it. And I absolutely love to hear it. I think it's dreadful, not just what's happening, but the real narrative and the negativity and the pessimism that we have in society at the moment about the state of affairs and the state of entrepreneurship. And why growth particularly? Why is that the area that you really wanted to focus on?
Yeah, good question. So the fund, again, right, the key thing, connecting world-class entrepreneurs to growth capital. So what I have come to discover throughout my investment approach over the last few years, which has refined, by the way, is that early stage is quite hard. You're spotting potential in individuals and their approaches, and the traditional venture capital model approach is like you take many bets and hope that a small number of them will come good. At the other extreme, you've got, shall we say, conventional debt providers. Their risk appetite invariably is quite low. Their structures are quite rigid. And so what you've got in the middle is, let's call it Series A-ish, at or near profitability, growth. That is going to be the workhorse of this fund. So approximately 80% of our fund will be invested in those types of individuals and businesses at or near profitability, growing, and they want some kind of, in fact, they want all three of debt, equity, and a seasoned operator and hand to help them. And not only the team that I've put together, including myself, but I have a whole list of standby, powerful and incredible non-executive directors that will represent the fund and also help the entrepreneurs as well. So the reason is, one, because I incredibly enjoy that space. Right? I've had my time of managing businesses going down and starting from scratch. There is something quite magical about that middle bit of on the up and needing some help and some direction and some guidance and some rocket fuel to really make a difference. If you don't mind, if I can pull back out from that, because this fund is a head and heart fund, right? And if you want to invest in companies in general and get a good return, then don't come to Rippon Capital. Get yourself a FTSE tracker, right? Get yourself a 7.5% long term, and go with that. The head and the heart approach for us about connecting world-class entrepreneurs to growth capital is this, Seb. 80% of the fund goes into workhorse. 2/3 fintech, 1/3 other. 2/3 debt, 1/3 equity, with the addition of very impactful people that can help. The heart of the fund is about 20%, which rolls over to entrepreneurs early stage. I'm not talking about early stage necessarily in their life. I'm talking here about early stage in their business. So we are not going to make lots of money and then work out at the end how bad we made people's lives and how we can give that money away tax efficiently. What we are going to do is make lots of money because I think profit is good. But 20% of the fund is going to be rolled over to support entrepreneurs, the next generation of entrepreneurs in the UK, Europe and beyond. 5% of that is going to go to very, very early stage entrepreneurs, and we'll be tying up with Epic, based in Birmingham, a wonderful venture that supports early stage entrepreneurs in need. And 15% of the fund is going towards kind of friends and family plus stage, and we're going to be tying up with the founders faculty also in Birmingham, but they are our starting locations. As you might expect, Newcastle is going to be number 2 on the list, and thereafter we're going to go. So growth capital, just to summarize, it's kind of a reflection of my story, my investment approach, what I enjoy, and the areas where I think we can make a massive difference to the economy and people's lives.
Amazing. So 80% is for the kind of growth stage, Series A-ish, around profitability. 20% is for that early stage, and you split that between those kind of, the friends and family and Epic. Super interesting. It seems like a really robust fund and thesis that you've got. I also want to touch on your investment journey. So you've had an amazing operating experience, co-founding some amazing companies. You also mentioned that you've been investing more recently. Can you talk about your experience, maybe success metrics, some companies that you're really proud of, and talk about just your experience as an investor and how that's led to the fund?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. So we've already touched on my very early stages of investment, which was get a 0% overdraft from the banks and roll it over into something which they weren't very happy about. I did say at the time, maybe you should be offering me a job instead of giving me a bit of a telling off here. But more latterly, and certainly post Monzo, my investment approach has changed, matured. I've made mistakes, and I've been getting better, and I've kind of found out the bit that I enjoy and the bit that I'm good at, which has then rolled over into the fund I've already explained. So I think in the early stage, I probably indexed, and as you might expect, having gone through the Starling and Monzo, and indeed setting up the alpaca farm with my wife, I kind of more indexed towards very, very early stage, looking at intelligent people who I thought could apply themselves to problems and solve them. And I guess it was understandable that I might go towards that. I then kind of spun right the other way and headed out into debt. A lot of my banking career has been spent in and around credit, unsecured, secured, and I kind of indexed the other way. And then I started coming across companies like the Money Platform, Plend, Sappy, Money. Right? These are platforms, and they're providing credit facilities to their customers. And what I started to discover there, a bit like the investment thesis and approach for the fund, is that these people and these companies, number one, wanted cash, but number two, they quite often wanted a bit of support and help. And so over time, I've changed from backing individuals, and by the way, I still do that because I can't help myself. Right? If you meet a brilliant person, and I don't mean brilliant necessarily logical, intellectual, I mean a thoughtful, caring, adaptable, passionate, hard-working person that is doing something good, so wonderful people doing wonderful things, I can't help myself. And I can't help myself but support them and place a little bit of an investment in them and their future. However, the workhorse of my fund largely replicates what I've just described is what will be the workhorse. The workhorse of my personal investments represent what the fund will be, and that is some combination of debt, and it could be senior debt, it could be junior, which is higher risk, it could be some contribution of equity, and then I help them out, as I've already described, right? You don't get Paul Rippon for the middle 90%, right? You should be competent and skilled to do your own 90% of the work. And if not, I can help you find people that can help you do that. You involve me in the outlying event. So when it goes really, really good or really, really bad. And at that point, and a number of my companies have had calls to call on me at both ends of that scale. And look, when you join Northern Rock as credit director 6 months before the credit crunch, and then end up looking after a third of the company's employees within a few months, I guess you've got to be quite good in a crisis. And so whether it's a crisis or a brilliant opportunity, you can be forgiven for thinking that I don't care, because I soak it all in, ask you loads of questions, and then help to come up with a constructive and pragmatic answer. But I do care. It's just that sometimes I find it hard to display that emotion, if you like. Maybe it's a British thing. I don't know. But so the investment approach and thesis, to summarise, has gone from backing individuals, which I still can't help myself doing, but I look for a different type of individual now. And then it's about where can I connect and resonate with two things: wonderful people doing wonderful things, because that I think is the essence of businesses, in my opinion. Wonderful people doing wonderful things. And if they are doing wonderful things and can't explain to me or describe what those are, or they don't resonate with me, I find that really difficult to connect with and invest. Equally, if they are doing wonderful things and they're people that I wouldn't trust to shuffle a pack of cards, for example, then I kind of go, this is going to be hard. And so for me, it's got to be that joining together of the magic of a wonderful person doing wonderful things, ideally with that three-way debt, equity, help, and that I feel is where the magic happens, and that is where my personal portfolio has really started performing. And let me give you a number, because I'm sure people will be wondering kind of what's the typical returns of my portfolio at the moment, which is a fairly sizable portfolio. We're talking about 35% a year, of which circa 15% of that comes from interest payments on debt, and circa 20% comes from equity uplift. That's if you exclude Monzo. If you want to stick Monzo in, then we go from 35 to 535% a year. But some people say that outliers don't count, but I think that's rather harsh, really. It's like, surely they must count because they're there.
Oh, this is the business of outliers, is venture investing, and those are amazing metrics. So I want to ask, you talked about how people don't come to you with the 90% of problems; they come with the 10%. What are those typical 10% problems that you really like to get stuck into?
Yeah, so those range from on the good side, we have found a customer or a relationship that love us and we want to do more business, but we don't have the funding or the people to do it. Should we take the risk and go with that, and how do we fill the gap? And at that point, I think I've made it my business throughout my career to have a great and varied network of people. I will quite happily go into a room, and what I do, I deliberately walk up to somebody who I don't know and just to say hello. Equally, I'm very happy to go in and chat to people I do know, but I find those random moments wonderful, and I reckon some of my closest connections and people and confidants are people that I just randomly walk up to, or randomly message on LinkedIn, or randomly message on Insta or whatever. It's just like, hello. And you know what, as part of the fund, I did that. So there's a chap in the fund called Daniel Reynolds, and despite my thinning hair and therefore apparent age, I can actually use ChatGPT and modern tools. And so me and ChatGPT had a little bit of a chat that if I was going to set up a fund and need a little bit of help from somebody, who is the best person in the world to talk to? And through a series of questions, including my communication style, ChatGPT helped me pick two individuals, one of which was Daniel. I messaged him on LinkedIn and went, hello, you don't know me, but this is what I'm going to do. And I need some help. And within about 3 minutes, he responded.
That's amazing.
So look, I've drifted off a little bit there. Apologies on that. But the extremes are, we've got this wonderful group of customers. We need to serve them. We need some facilities. I will help you find the facilities, the debt, the equity, and the team. I'll just introduce you to those people because I can, and I'm lucky enough to do that. At the other end of the scale, some of my investments, and my entrepreneurs have come to me and said, we can't produce revenue. We've tried. We can't do it. We've tried to get this regulatory authorization. We can't. We have just been hit by a fraud and it's wiped out all of our runway. What do we do? Now, those extremes, and certainly those bad extremes, would I have liked to have known earlier? Maybe. But sometimes, we get a bit carried away or excited or competent and think we can solve those problems. And sometimes it is handy to know earlier, but then there's also the kind of the boy that cried wolf, right? If someone keeps coming to you all that time, you go, look, your job really as an entrepreneur is to kind of work out and solve these problems as well. And with my personal portfolio of circa 30 customers that I manage, that's 30 clients that I manage on about a day a week outside the farm, I frankly haven't got the time, and my brain doesn't work on the middle bit. My brain and my passion and my interest is on the big problems and the big opportunities. So that's a flavour of the sort of reasons why my portfolio of companies currently come to me, and the sort of problems and opportunities and the way I might approach it.
Amazing. And let's just talk about what stage are you at in the fund. So I think you're just announcing the fund now. You're looking to raise some money for it, and then when are you going to kind of aim to deploy some capital?
Yeah, thanks. So we are launching now. You are the first person to ask me these wonderful questions and share the news with everybody, which is fantastic, and I couldn't have asked for anybody better to do that. Because the word is getting out there. I was kind of on stealth mode until a little story broke, and I had to come clean as to what I was up to. We have a few tens of millions of pounds pledged by investors already before we actually kind of gone out in a meaningful way to investors, which is incredible. It's a huge vote of confidence in the team, hopefully in my track record as well. And also, as you've alluded to, the story. Right, this is not another fund. If that's all you want, get a tracker. Right, don't come here. If your head and heart, if you really want them, if you've ever built something and proud of it, if you've ever needed some help and want to help somebody back, that's what Rippon Capital is about. It's about producing fantastic returns and giving back while you're making money, helping others. That's what it's about, and that's what we stand for. So we're launching now. We've got tens of millions of pounds of investors already in place. The fund structure is identified. The team is in place. We've got a £1 billion backlog of outstanding companies and individuals and entrepreneurs that need growth capital to make a wonderful difference. I think Rippon Capital and all the help that we can give it can do more for levelling up than some have claimed to do for many years, and that would warm my heart, Seb. Right? If we could light the fire and help people around the UK and beyond to find out how to become entrepreneurs, better entrepreneurs, then I will be a very, very happy man, as will the rest of the team. That's what it's about. So this is a head and heart story, and I hope it appeals to people accordingly. So we got investors, we got the pipeline, we got the team, the fund mechanics are sorted. We're probably going to go for about 250 million-ish on Fund 1. But again, the plan here is to create a multi-billion pound platform and to be a creator of multi-billion pound companies. Right? This, although as we've touched on, this is to help a whole range of people. So at one level, the early stage stuff, maybe you want to be a car valeter. Maybe you want to be a market gardener. Maybe the only difference that you will make is to you personally and your family, right? And if you do that and we can help you, wonderful. And we'll do that through Cofounders. If you're going to create yourself the next Starling, if you're going to create yourself the next Monzo or Revolut or Lendable or Wise, then even better. And I hope and expect us to create several multi-billion pound companies through the work that we're going to do with the fund.
Amazing. Look, it's been an absolute joy speaking to you. I love the mission, right? And the passion comes through. And I think you're such an amazing operator that I think this is going to be a really valuable and meaningful endeavor. And I'm super supportive. I think this is fantastic. To finish up, I'd like to ask three quick fire questions, if that's all right.
Go on, Em.
So the first two are around your career. You've had a super varied, interesting career: Northern Rock, fintech, alpaca farming. What has been the biggest highlight of your career to date? Maybe it was a launch or a raise or an amazing investment, or it was something where you thought, wow, this is it. This is exactly what I wanted from this thing, and I love this. What was that number one moment across your career?
Getting the banking license at Monzo. We had gone through some of the viewers will know, right? And the story's been told on this. There were some challenges at Starling, and there were some challenges at Monzo, and people had worked for years getting this right and working hard, and everyone was getting a bit stressed and a bit down and a bit hassled and run down and upset. And then the news came through, and I took the phone. I still remember we were in this dingy office. I don't think the toilet worked, as usual at Monzo, all things Monzo. People were down and working hard and furious and kind of doing their thing. And I took the call from the regulators, and they said, "You've got the license." And I looked around, and like nobody was looking. And I went on Slack, and I typed, "We have a banking license." And then around the office, you started seeing, yeah, and
Wow.
like people's emotions just kind of explode, and it was such an incredible time and a release and a moment that is just like well ingrained on me, as you could
I can't
tell.
imagine. That must have been the atmosphere in the office that day must have been unbelievable.
Party time.
Yeah, I can imagine. And on the flip side, what has been the lowest point where things have, it felt like nothing was going right, you're up against the wall, and you just felt like, everything was going wrong?
Gosh, so 2006-ish, I had left Norwich and Peterborough Building Society, and I joined this organisation called Northern Rock. And I decided to join as credit director, and it was very exciting. And I thought I'd done wonderful due diligence and asked lots of questions and read their accounts and spoke to lots of people and thought, wow, right, these people are growing at 20% a year. They seem lovely people. They're from the Northeast. They seem really, really nice and kind of really energetic and really positive and good. And then And people have kind of told different stories about this, and I have my own view. I think for a bit of bad luck and bid timing, Northern Rock, of course, became the epicenter of the financial crisis. My boss went off poorly, and I suddenly found myself the new boy on the block, credit director at the epicenter of the global financial crisis in the credit crunch. And I found myself in the Bank of England with the regulators, in the boardroom, explaining and helping everybody to understand what was happening. And then the team, people had questions. And Seb, it was the best of times and the worst of times. I learned so much. And before your eyes, right, you saw people, the Northeast people are wonderful people. They're very, very humble, very hardworking. And you saw people that had spent their lives working at an organisation, put their heart and soul into it, built up their salaries, built up their pensions, thought their families were set and looked after for life. And then they started seeing their jobs, their bonuses, their pensions, their shares, their security crumble away, nationalisation, and it was really, really hard. The impact on the staff, on the customers who were scared, on shareholders, on regulators that I don't think were quite sure entirely what to do at that point. It was a really tough time. It was the best of times. I learned so much about people and about crisis management and about rebuilding, and it was the worst of times. It was tough, but it was also a huge learning time as well. So yeah, credit director, just in time for the credit crunch.
I mean, amazing. I mean, it must have been, very few people would have had the insight that you have had of the credit crunch, the financial crisis, and the resilience that you must have had to kind of get through that, especially a brand new job. As far as like brand new jobs go, that is got to be up there with one of the most unfortunate in terms of timings.
Yeah.
Crazy, amazing. And the final question, what advice would you give to maybe a very early entrepreneur, so someone just starting on the entrepreneurial journey, or someone who is like eager to get going but doesn't quite know how to start?
Yeah, that's a good one, and I think my comment here will be particularly indexed towards Brits, not exclusively so, because I was asked a similar question the other day, and the Brits seem to like going into their garden sheds and coming up with the best answer ever, and it takes them forever to come up with it. And so to answer your question, I would say, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to do your business, then today, in the next hour, do that thing to make somebody smile.
Amazing.
Because you've taken a step forward. You've done your thing, and you've got a reaction that's a positive reaction. And then you can build on that. You can refine your thing, and you can speak to the person and find out how they feel about what you've done, and you can learn. But yeah, don't disappear into your garden shed for 2 years and kind of optimize the perfect solution. Just do it. Do it and learn. Be brave. People are generally very kind and will help you along the journey. But help yourself and do it. Do it now.
Amazing. Well, look, that's great advice, and thank you so much for joining and sharing your story, Paul. You've had such an interesting career, and I can't wait to see kind of Rippon Capital go from strength to strength.
Thank you, Seb. Very kind.
Love it. Let's stay in touch.
Indeed.